They told us the Vrine wouldn't fight us in the streets. They were wrong about that the way they were wrong about everything else. Softly, smiling, with the patience of something that had already decided how the story ended. My name is John Halloran, and on the morning the city fell, I was wiping engine grease off a wrench in the back of a workshop in Sector 9, listening to my sister hum a song our mother used to sing. The song was old enough that no one alive could remember the language anymore. The Vrine couldn't either, and that turned out to matter. We called the city New Caledon back when it still had a name worth using. 12 million people stacked into a grid of cooling towers and sky bridges, ringed by the black mirror of the bay and the long gray scar of the highway no one drove on anymore. The Vrine came down on a Tuesday, not in fire, not in horns. They came down in a slow lavender cloud that settled over the spires of the central district, and then they stood very still for 3 days, letting us look at them, letting us understand. By the time the broadcast began, every screen in the city already belonged to them. Every camera on every corner already turned a face the same way, and a face you could almost call human filled the air above the plaza. His name, the name he gave us, was Iskar of the Seventh Pillar. He had skin the color of riverbed clay, 4 eyes set in a vertical column down the center of his face, and a mouth that didn't open when he spoke. The voice came from somewhere behind his throat, soft and reasonable. In our own language, perfect except for the way the vowels held a half beat too long, as if he was tasting them. He said he had not come to conquer, he had come to purify, to take the disease of our disorder and replace it with the elegant geometry of the pillar. He said there would be no more crime, no more hunger, no more violence. He said it the way you'd talk to a dog that had run too long without a leash, and the worst of it was that some people listened. My sister Frances was 19 that year. She had a stripe of grease across her cheek and a wrench in her hand, and she looked up at the screen and said, "He smiles like a man who has already eaten." I should have written that down. I didn't. I just laughed and went back to the engine, and 3 weeks later the Vrine had walked into every neighborhood council, every union hall, every clinic, and quietly replaced the people who ran them with people who looked the same, but who had begun to speak with that same half-beat lag in their vowels. They called it the concordance. They said it was for our protection. And the cameras on every corner watched, and the lavender cloud thinned to nothing, and the new lights came on in the spires, soft and blue and watching. We weren't soldiers, we were a workshop. 6 of us, working out of a converted tram depot on the edge of Sector 9. Me, Francis, a half-blind welder named Old Henrik, a Filipina engineer named Lena, who could rebuild any motor with her eyes closed and a cigarette in her teeth, a kid called Rabbit, who had been a courier before the cameras went up, and Saul, who had come down from the northern shipyards 2 winters before and never quite told us why. We fixed things, buses, generators, the pump that fed the rooftop gardens above the eastern blocks. When the concordance closed the workshop's permits, we kept working anyway, quietly, by candlelight, and people came to us with the broken pieces of a city that the Vrine had decided not to repair. That was how it started, not with a rebellion, with a kettle that wouldn't boil. An old woman in the tenements brought it down to us. Her grandson's kettle, she said, and would we have a look? Lena opened it up and went very still. There was a thing inside the base, not a heating coil, something glassy and cold and growing, with little hair-thin filaments that crawled along the copper. We pulled apart 3 more kettles that day. Same thing. We pulled apart a radio. Same thing. We pulled apart a child's toy lantern that had been a concordance welcome gift, and the filaments inside were already reaching for the wood of the table. "They're listening," Lena said, "through the metal in our homes." "They're doing more than listening," said Saul. He had a face like a folded map and a voice that didn't carry. "The filaments are organic. They're rooting. Give it 6 months, and there'll be one of those in every wall in the city." Frances looked at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We started ripping the listeners out, quietly at first. Then less quietly. Word spread the way water finds cracks, slow, then suddenly. The first ones we pulled, we burned in a barrel out behind the depot. That was a mistake. The filaments don't burn the way wood burns. They went up in a white flame that climbed 3 feet above the barrel rim, and they smelled, faintly, of cinnamon and copper. And a Vrine suit came walking down the street the next morning with its head tilted that periscope way, sniffing the air with the small breathing thing under its jaw. We learned. After that, we crushed them in vises and packed the powder into lead-lined cans and dropped the cans into the bay at low tide. The bay was a graveyard already. The fish had been gone since the second month. Whatever else the powder did down there, no one came looking for it. Saul was the one who figured out the filaments could be cultured, cut them at the root, give them an hour of dark and a little electrical current, and they would grow back small but obedient, oriented toward whatever frequency you fed them. He kept 3 in a glass jar under his workbench. He fed them, at first, only the sound of old Hendrix radio, which played the same 6 folk songs from before the Concordance on a loop, on a station that probably wasn't broadcasting to anyone but us. The filaments grew toward the music. They grew toward Frances when she hummed. They grew, in particular, toward the song our mother used to sing. They leaned, in the jar, the way sunflowers lean. Saul noticed this before any of us did. He didn't say anything about it for a long time. He just wrote it in the little black book he carried in his back pocket, the one he never let anyone read. We made other discoveries in those months. Lena worked out that the Vreen suits did not, themselves, breathe air the way we did. The small breathing thing under the jaw, gill, lung, mouth, we never settled on a word for it, pulled in something from the lavender residue that still clung, microscopically, to every surface in the Central District. Outside that district, they tired quickly. They walked slower. The Four Eyes did not focus as well. This was important. It told us where they could not follow. Rabbit, who had been a courier and who knew the rooftops better than anyone alive, mapped the dead zones, the pockets of the city where the lavender had never settled. Old industrial spurs, the leeward side of the river bluffs, the long alley behind the eastern markets, where the wind off the bay came up and through every morning before dawn. We moved the workshops into those zones. We moved the families of the workshop workers into them too, quietly, 2 and 3 at a time. We did not call it an evacuation. We did not call it anything. The Concordance still counted noses every Sunday, and we were careful to leave just enough noses in the old neighborhoods to make the counts come out right. The Vrine were patient. That was the thing we kept forgetting and relearning. They were not in a hurry. They had 3 months to wear us into the shape they wanted, and then 6, and then a year, and they did not care which one of those it took. They watched us through the cameras. They listened to us through the kettles. They made small adjustments. A curfew here, a ration card there, a quiet disappearance of a man who had complained too loudly in a tram queue, and they waited for the city to settle into the new geometry. They had done it before, somewhere else, to someone else. They had the patience of a thing that knew how the story ended. By the end of the second month, we had a network of 22 workshops across 4 sectors, all doing the same thing, all passing the cleaned components back through a chain of bicycle couriers and rooftop runners. By the end of the third, the Vrine noticed. They came for the depot on a Thursday in the cold half of autumn. 12 of them in their soft gray suits, no weapons visible, walking up the loading ramp in single file. Isker's voice, they all carried his voice now, that same half-beat lag, came out of the lead one's collar. John Halloran, it said. We would like to talk. Old Henrik was on the rooftop with a hunting rifle that he had cleaned every Sunday for 40 years and never once fired. He looked down at the suits, and he looked at me through the cracked skylight, and he raised one gray eyebrow. I shook my head. Not yet. I walked out and met them at the bottom of the ramp. The lead one had Isker's face, more or less. The 4 eyes, the clay skin, the mouth that didn't open. Up close, I could see the seams where the suit met the throat, and the place under the jaw, where something was breathing that wasn't a lung. You have been removing our gifts, he said, from the homes of citizens. This is not in keeping with the concordance. Your gifts grow into the walls, I said. They become part of the home, as we wish to become part of the city. There is no difference. There's all the difference. The Vrine tilted his head, not a human tilt. The whole neck rotated, slowly, like a periscope. The 4 eyes did not blink. John Halloran, he said, the moon tonight is like a bullet. Silver, smiling, beautiful, violent. We have studied your poets. We understand the things you love. We would like you to come with us to the pillar and speak with Isker of the 7th. He believes you, and he can come to an understanding. Behind him, I could see Frances in the door of the workshop, holding the wrench, knuckles white. Tell Isker, I said, that I'll meet him, but not at the pillar. Somewhere neutral, the old central library. Tomorrow at dusk. The Vrine's head rotated back. Agreed, he said. We will send no escort. We come in peace. As you do. They walked away the same way they came, single file, soft gray suits in the soft gray light, and the second they were out of sight, Sol grabbed my arm and said, John, you can't go. I have to. It's a trap. You walk into the library and you don't walk out. I know. Frances came up beside us, with the wrench still in her hand. Then we go with you. No, I said. You don't, because they're going to expect that. They're going to spring the trap on me at the library, and while they're doing it, the rest of you are going to be at the central junction under the Concordance Plaza, pulling the seed crystal out of their broadcast tower. That's where their listening grows from. You yank that, and every filament in every kettle and every wall in this city goes dark. Sol stared at me. You're going to be bait. I'm going to be a poet, I said. I'm going to recite him a beautiful poem about the moon while you tear the heart out of his city. Lena laughed once, sharp and surprised. Old Henrik on the roof racked the bolt on his unfired rifle. Rabbit was already pulling on his courier jacket. Frances put her hand on the side of my face for half a second and then turned away before either of us could say anything stupid. We had 18 hours. We spent them well. Lena mapped the tower from a stolen survey print with a stub of red wax pencil on a sheet of butcher paper laid across the workbench. She marked the conduits in blue and the seed crystal chamber in red and the access stairs in a dotted yellow line, and when she was done, she stepped back and looked at it the way a tailor looks at a suit and said very quietly, "It's beautiful. They built it beautifully. It's going to be a shame to break it." Sol traced the conduit lines from a pre-Vrine survey we'd hidden under the floorboards. He laid the two maps side by side and ran his fingers down the joints and showed me where the new Vrine lines hooked into the old city steam tunnels. An inheritance, an opportunity. They didn't tear it out, he said. They didn't bother. They just laid theirs on top. So when you pull the crystal, the wave is going to run all the way back through our old pipes, too. It's going to ring the whole grid like a bell. Will the bell be loud? The bell will be loud. Rabbit and 3 other couriers ran word to the other workshops, 22 of them now, all of them ready. Rabbit took the longest run himself, out to the workshop in Sector 4, where they had been quietly building a thing of their own that none of us had seen yet. He came back 2 hours later with 3 strangers and a wooden crate, and the strangers looked at our workbench and at Sol's filaments in the jar and at the song paper folded under my hand on the table, and the oldest of them, a woman called May, who had run a clinic before the Concordance and a resistance cell after it, set the crate down on the floor and said, "We can grow theirs back, too. We can make ours bigger. We can put a piece of theirs inside a piece of ours, and the song you hum to the jar. Sol's been telling us about the jar. That song will make the piece of theirs lean. Toward the lattice. Toward Iskar. We've been working on it for 6 weeks. We were waiting for someone to tell us what to do with it." I looked at the crate. "Will it work?" "It will work for about 4 minutes," May said. "After that, it stops being a device and starts being a fire." 4 minutes is enough. 4 minutes is exactly enough. Old Henrik came down off the roof and showed Frances how to load and clear the rifle, and she did it once, twice, 3 times, until her hands stopped shaking. He showed her the safety. He showed her where to put her thumb. He told her, in the slow, careful voice he used only with the people he loved, that the trick of a rifle was the same as the trick of any tool. You didn't fight it, you listened to it, and when it told you it was ready, you let it be ready. She nodded. She put it down. She picked it up again. She put it down. She did not pick it up the 3rd time, and old Henrik did not make her, and neither of them said anything about it. I sat in the back office and I wrote down, for the first time in my life, the song our mother used to sing. The words I couldn't translate. The melody I'd known since before I'd had teeth. I folded the paper into my coat pocket, then I went to meet Iskar. The library had been beautiful once. 3 stories of pale stone and tall windows, with a reading room under a glass dome that had survived 2 wars and a fire. The Vrine had not touched it. They didn't need to. They had simply emptied it, taken the books out one by one, and replaced them with their own. Soft, pale things that looked like books but breathed very slowly when you weren't watching. I walked past them up the central staircase. I could feel the cameras following me. The ones the Vrine had installed, and the ones that had been there before and now belonged to them. Every lens turning, every red dot waking up. Iskar was waiting in the reading room. He was taller in person than he had looked on the broadcasts, closer to 8 feet than 7. He stood under the glass dome with his back to the western windows, and the low orange sun came in around him and made a corona of his outline, and the 4 eyes in the column of his face were closed. The mouth that did not open was very still. "John Halloran," he said, voice from behind the throat, half beat on the vowels. "Thank you for coming. You're welcome." The 4 eyes opened, one at a time, from the bottom up. It was not a thing a human face could do. It was not a thing you forgot. I am told you remove our gifts from the walls of the people. I do. Why? Because they're not gifts. He considered this. The dome above us hummed faintly, wind on glass, or something inside the glass that wasn't wind. John, he said, you are an intelligent man. You have built things. You have repaired things. You understand systems. Look at our system. Crime in the city is now functionally zero. Hunger is gone. The trains run. The water is clean. Your people sleep through the night for the first time in a generation, and in exchange for this, all we ask is to listen. Only listen. We do not punish. We do not interrogate. We listen, and we learn, and where we find disharmony, we adjust. Gently, quietly, the way you would adjust a guitar string. Tell me, John, what is so terrible about being heard? I let him finish. I let the silence sit. Then I took the paper out of my coat pocket and unfolded it on the long oak table between us. My mother used to sing me a song, I said. She didn't know what the words meant. Her mother didn't know either. It was in a language so old that nobody has spoken it for 400 years. The melody is in 5/8 time, which is wrong. Human songs aren't supposed to be in 5/8. But this one is. And every kid in my family, for I don't know how many generations, has fallen asleep to it. I want to sing it for you. Is that all right? The Four Eyes were watching me. The mouth was very still. Please, Isker said, so I sang it. Quietly, the way Francis had been humming it in the workshop on the morning the world ended. 5/8 time. Words I didn't know. Melody I had known since before I had teeth. Iskar listened. Isker listened the way I imagined no Vrian had ever listened to anything before. Head tilted, 4 eyes wide, the small breathing thing under his jaw going still. When I finished, he said in a voice that was almost gentle, "It is beautiful, John. What does it mean?" "I don't know." "You don't know?" "No. You sang it with your whole body, and you don't know what it means." "That's right. Why do you sing it then?" "Because my mother did. Because her mother did. Because that's enough." There was a very long silence. Outside the western windows, the sun went the last quarter of the way down, and the corona around Iskar's outline faded, and the room went into that blue cold hour that doesn't have a name. The 4 eyes closed, one at a time, from the top down. "John Halloran," Iskar said, "I do not understand this. I know you don't. Explain it to me." I just did. The mouth that did not open, opened, just a fraction, just enough for me to see what was behind it. Then the lights in the library went out, all at once, and somewhere in the city a tower screamed, and Iskar's 4 eyes snapped open in the dark. Lena had cut it 8 minutes early. I will tell you what I learned that night, and what I learned in the months after, because the order matters. What I learned first was that a Vrian in the dark, with its listening severed, is not the same creature as a Vrian in the light. The half-beat lag in his vowels got worse. The clay skin of his face dimpled, then rippled, then went very still in a way that suggested something underneath was holding its breath. He said my name 3 times, John, John, John. And each time the half-beat got longer, and the third time it was almost 2 full seconds, and I understood, the way you understand a thing without knowing how, that Isker was not one mind. Isker was a chorus, and the chorus had just lost the conductor. I ran. I ran down the central staircase, past the breathing books, and out into a city that was, for the first time in 3 months, not being listened to. The lavender lamps in the spires had gone dark. The cameras on every corner had gone slack on their gimbals. Lenses pointed at the pavement, red dots out. People were spilling out of doorways already, blinking, looking up. They knew. They didn't know what they knew, but they knew. The way you know a fever has broken. I made it back to the depot by midnight. Saul was on the loading ramp with blood on his sleeve that wasn't his. Lena had a burn down the side of her neck. Rabbit had a grin that wouldn't go away. Old Henrik was on the roof again, rifle across his knees, watching the dead lamps in the dead spires. Francis was not there. They got her at the junction, Saul said. He could not look at me. She was the one who pulled the crystal. She made us go first. She said she'd be right behind us. Where? I said. The pillar. I stood in the loading ramp doorway, and I felt the cold come into my coat the way it comes into a house through an open window in winter, and I did not make a sound, and after a long time Saul said, very quietly, "John, they're going to use her to bring you in. I know. They're going to broadcast. They're going to make her. I know. What do we do?" I looked up at old Henrik on the roof. I looked at Lena with the burn down her neck. I looked at Rabbit, who was 19, the same age as Francis. I looked at Sol, whose face was a folded map, and who had never told us why he came down from the shipyards, but who I trusted now the way you trust a man who has stood next to you in the dark. "We're going to give them what they want," I said. "We're going to walk into the pillar, and we're going to bring it down." We did not sleep that night. None of us. May came back with the crate, and inside it, on a bed of black foam, was the device. The size of a small dog, just as Lena had described, but heavier, denser, humming faintly even now, as if it were a thing that had been alive once and was only sleeping. Saul set it on the workbench and laid his own jar of cultured filaments next to it, and he and May went to work, splicing one into the other in a way that I did not understand and did not need to. Lena worked the radio dial through every band, listening for the one frequency the Vrine had left active. They had to leave one active, she said, to coordinate the suits, and when she found it, she wrote the number down on a card and slid the card across to Saul, and Saul nodded and tuned the device's heart to it. Around 3 in the morning, people started arriving at the depot. Not couriers, not workshop hands, just people. A man from the tenements with a butcher knife in a leather sheath. 2 sisters from the eastern markets with a length of pipe each. A retired tram driver with his old conductor's whistle on a string around his neck. A boy of maybe 16 with his grandfather's army knife. They did not knock. They came up the loading ramp and stood in the half-dark and waited to be told what to do. I had not asked them. None of us had asked them. Rabbit had run word about Francis, and word had run on its own. From there, the way water finds cracks. I stood in the doorway and counted them as they came. 20, 40, 60 by dawn. By the time the eastern sky started to go gray, there were more than 100 people in the yard outside the depot, and not one of them was a soldier, and not one of them was leaving. I came down the ramp. I stood in front of them. I did not know what to say. May put her hand on my arm. "John," she said, "you don't have to make a speech. They're not here for a speech. What are they here for? They're here because they heard you sang to him in the library. The story got out. They're here because someone finally did something instead of waiting. I didn't do anything. You sang a song." And the lights went out. That's enough. I looked at her. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the device on the workbench in the depot behind me, and at Francis's empty cot, and at old Henrik on the roof with his rifle laid across his knees. "All right," I said. "All right. Then here's the thing. We're going to walk into the pillar at dawn. We're going to bring this device with us, and we're going to plant it at the base of the needle. And we're going to give May 4 minutes to set it growing. While we're doing that, the rest of you are going to be in the plaza. You're not going to fight. You're going to sing. The song. The one in 5/8 time. The one we've all been humming without knowing the words. Francis has been humming it in the workshop for 3 months, and Saul's filaments lean toward it like it's the sun. The Vrine can't process it. They can't tune it. It's the one thing in this city they have not been able to make sense of. So we're going to give it to them. All at once. From everywhere. There was a long silence. Then the tram driver, the old one with the conductor's whistle, lifted the whistle to his lips and blew it. Once, short and clean. The way he must have blown it 1,000 times at 1,000 stops in the years before the concordance. And then he started to hum. 5/8 time. The low note. The hum under the string. The man next to him picked it up. Then the 2 sisters. Then the boy with the knife. By the time the sun was an inch above the horizon, 100 people in the yard of a converted tram depot in Sector 9 were humming a song that none of them knew the words to, and the lavender residue in the air, what little of it had drifted this far east, was going faintly cloudy, and somewhere across the city, I would learn this later, much later, from May, who had a friend in Sector 2. Somewhere across the city, other people had started humming too, in kitchens, on rooftops, in the long alley behind the eastern markets, where the wind came up before dawn. The song was loose in the city. It had been loose for months, only no one had been listening for it. Now everyone was. The thing about the pillar, about the 7th pillar specifically, which was Iskar's, which sat in the center of the Concordance Plaza like a finger pointed at a god, was that it was beautiful. The Vrine built beautifully. They built the way insects build, with no wasted line, and the pillar tapered up from a base of pale stone into a needle of something that wasn't quite glass and wasn't quite metal, and at night it glowed from the inside with a soft purple light. The base was open. Anyone could walk in. The Vrine wanted you to walk in. They wanted you to come to the central atrium and look up the inside of the needle and see the lattice of Iskar's chorus, all of them hanging in their slow, soft cradles, all 4-eyed faces turning toward you, and feel the gravity of it. We walked in at dawn. There were 9 of us by then. The 6 from the depot, minus Francis, plus 3 from a workshop in Sector 4, who had brought a thing Lena had designed. It was the size of a small dog. It looked like nothing in particular. It contained in a lattice of copper and crushed glass and the seed crystal we had pulled out of the broadcast tower, a frequency that would do to the Vrine lattice what the Vrine lattice did to copper kettles. It would root. It would grow. It would not stop. We walked in past the soft gray suits. They didn't stop us. They were waiting for us. Of course they were waiting for us. We walked through the lobby with its breathing pale walls and into the central atrium, and we looked up. Isker's chorus was up there, hundreds of them, all four eyes open, all facing down, and on a low platform at the base of the needle, in a soft gray suit that didn't fit, with her hands at her sides and her face very still, was Frances. She looked at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Isker's voice came from everywhere at once, from the walls, from the floor, from Frances's mouth, which moved a half beat too late to match the syllables. John Halloran, it said. You came. I came. You brought a device. I brought a device. You intend to destroy us. I intend to bring you home. Isker's chorus, all of them, tilted their heads in unison. The whole atrium did the periscope rotation. Home, he said. Explain. I took a step forward. Sol and Lena were on either side of me. Rabbit had the device in a courier bag over his shoulder. Old Henrik was outside on a rooftop a quarter-mile away with his unfired rifle and one round chambered and a line of sight on the topmost window of the needle. Lena had told him exactly which window. You said you came to purify, I said. You said you'd take our disorder and make it elegant. You looked at our city and saw a thing to be tuned. You looked at my sister, who hums a song in 5/8 time that nobody understands, and you saw a string to be adjusted. You don't understand what we are. You think we're a system. We're not. We're a chorus, too. But ours doesn't have a conductor. Ours never has, and when one of us hums a song without knowing the words, the rest of us hum it back, and that's enough. That's all of it. That's the whole thing. The four eyes of the nearest Vrine, the one closest to Frances, closed from the top down. John, Isker said through Frances's mouth with a half-beat lag. This is not... I'm not done, I said. I took out the paper from my coat pocket, the song my mother sang. I unfolded it. I held it up, and I did the only thing I had ever been good at. I sang, 5/8 time, words I didn't know, the melody I had known since before I had teeth. Sol joined in on the second bar. He had heard Frances hum it in the workshop 100 times. Lena joined on the third, Rabbit on the fourth. The three from Sector 4 didn't know the melody, but they hummed under it, holding the low note, the way you hum under a song you're hearing for the first time but already love. And Frances opened her mouth, and the half-beat lag was gone, and she sang the next line clean, in her own voice, the voice she had been humming with in the workshop on the morning the world ended. And Iskar's chorus above us went still in a way that wasn't stillness. It was the opposite of stillness. It was the sound of a thing trying to understand a frequency it had never been built to hear. Rabbit dropped the device. It rolled across the pale stone floor and came to rest at the base of the needle, and it began, very quietly, to grow. The first Vrine in the lattice screamed, not with a mouth, with the small breathing thing under its jaw. The scream was at a frequency that made the glass of the atrium walls go cloudy. Old Henrik fired his unfired rifle. The top window of the needle shattered. The cold air came in. The device rooted into the floor, and the lattice of Isker's chorus, all of them, began to come apart the way a tapestry comes apart when you pull the right thread. We sang the song to the end. All 5 verses. Frances on the melody, Sol on the harmony, Lena on the low hum, me on the words I didn't know. By the time we finished, the pillar was hollow. I will not pretend it was clean. It wasn't. 3 of the workshop people from Sector 4 did not make it out. Lena lost the sight in one eye to a flare from the lattice as it collapsed. Sol cut a piece of falling glass across the back that took him 3 months to walk off. Rabbit was fine, which was the only piece of luck we got that day. Old Henrik fired his rifle for the second time in his life 2 minutes later into the chest of a Vrine in a gray suit who had come up the rooftop stairs behind him, and then he sat down on the cold tarpaper and cried for an hour, because that was the kind of man he was. And Frances walked off the platform and down the steps and into the atrium, and she put her hand on the side of my face for half a second the way she had in the workshop, and she said, "You took your time. I had to write the words down. You don't know the words." "I know. I wrote them down anyway." She laughed. The half-beat lag was gone from her vowels, and it never came back. It took 6 weeks to clean the Vrine out of the city. The chorus was gone, but the soft gray suits weren't, and a Vrine without a conductor is not less dangerous, only more confused. We had to go workshop by workshop, sector by sector. Other cities did it differently. Some did it better. Some did it much, much worse. We heard about a place in the south where the locals had simply locked the vine in their own pillar and let the device grow until the needle came down. We heard about a place in the east where it took 2 years and most of the population. We were lucky. We had Lena, and we had old Henrik on a roof, and we had a song. A year later, Iskar, what was left of him, came back, not in person, through a thing he had left behind, a small breathing book in the library, which had taken 11 months to figure out how to speak. It spoke through a concordance loudspeaker in the empty plaza at dawn, when there was no one to hear it but me, because I had taken to walking down to the plaza at dawn, because I had not entirely stopped expecting the lavender cloud to come back. John Halloran, it said. Half-beat lag, but softer now, almost tired. Isker, I have a question. Ask it. The song. Yes. You truly do not know the words. I truly do not. Then how? It paused. The half-beat got longer. Then how does it work? I stood in the cold plaza in the cold morning, and I looked up at the loudspeaker, and I thought about what to say. I thought about my mother. I thought about Francis. I thought about old Henrik on his rooftop and Lena with her one good eye, and Sol, who had told me finally in the long convalescence after the pillar why he had come down from the shipyards, a daughter he had lost, a song she had used to sing, the kind of grief that does not have words because the words don't fit. Isker, I said, the song works because we don't know the words. If we knew them, we'd argue about what they meant. We'd write them down differently. We'd correct each other. We'd make the song into a thing. Instead, it's a feeling, and a feeling doesn't have a conductor. A feeling is just everyone humming under everyone else, holding the low note until something happens. That's what we are. That's the whole thing. You came here to tune us. You couldn't, because we're not a string. We're the hum under the string, and you can't tune a hum. The loudspeaker was quiet for a long time. Then it said, very softly, John, the moon tonight is like a bullet. It is. Silver, smiling, beautiful, violent. Yes, I do not understand it. I know you don't. I would like to. I stood there in the cold for a long time. I thought about the answer. I didn't have one. So I did what I had done in the library, what I had done in the atrium, what my mother had done in the kitchen on 100 winter mornings before I had teeth. I unfolded the paper from my coat pocket. I still carried it. I will carry it until I die. And I sang the song 5/8 time, words I didn't know, the melody I had known forever. I sang it to the empty plaza in the cold morning, to a small breathing book in a dead library a quarter-mile away, and to a thing that had once been a chorus and was now only a single tired voice, and somewhere above the spires the first light came up gold over the bay. When I finished, the loudspeaker was silent. I waited. After a long minute, very quietly, in a voice that no longer had a half-beat lag, Isker hummed the low note, not the melody, not the words, just the hum under it, the thing you hold when you don't know the song yet but you want to. I walked home through the waking city. Frances was in the workshop. She had the kettle on. She was humming. I joined her on the low note. We held it together for a long time, and we did not say anything because we did not need to, because that, in the end, is the whole thing. That is what they came here not understanding. That is what we are. We are the hum under the string, and no one, no pillar, no concordance, no four-eyed thing with a mouth that does not open, has ever yet found the frequency that can silence us. They never will.